so we can share this. All right, so we are recording. My screen is shared over here. Faye, we miss you and we hope that you are getting well. So whenever you have a chance to watch this, that's the right time, okay? And I know that you'll ask questions when we see you again. So I took you into the Gimbal Labs playground on Wednesday and we looked at metadata in a few ways. And we spent most of our time on Wednesday looking at the Postgres endpoint that's served up by Dandelion, right? And we saw that we can look here at all of the metadata keys so far. This is just a really basic implementation that's similar to what the blockchain intelligence team did over at Cent Stake Pool, right? And theirs is much more robust. They have a lot more going on. And what I'm trying to show here is just some of the basics for how that works, right? So when I click any one of these keys, I showed you, for example, if we click key 100, oops, I just got to learn how to scroll again. Here we go, right? We can see that there are this many transactions at this key, and this is the most recent one. Okay, this is the most recent metadata at that key. And I showed you in the code how all of these are dynamic and they come from our dynamic route here in Next.js. And I can go back to that anytime. So just tell me if we need to review that. But before I go back into our code, this is what I showed you very quickly at the end of our last session. Another way to interact with metadata is via GraphQL. This is just another endpoint served up by Dandelion that allows you to interact with metadata. And GraphQL has a lot of advantages over Postgres. And I want to look at some of those advantages today to start really saying, okay, if I know that this data is here, I can use it in this way. So let's just look at the behavior for a moment, right? The other day, we looked at key 101. And actually, this is not behaving the way I built it to behave. So one thing I might want to do today is live troubleshoot this, because what you see here is when I type 101 into this little box, I actually get a few different keys. So I'm not sure why that's happening. So I want to troubleshoot that. I really can't explain that. But the other thing is that some behavior is hard coded into this page, okay? And so, right, what I wrote here is that if there's data, you'll see some data, and we do, and that's fine, right? But if we try certain metadata keys, like 100, for example, we get a particular response. We get this particular list, and this comes from a metadata transaction. I also put this one here, and this was a date. This was March 2nd, 2021. Let's do that, 2021, 0302. Okay. What I did here is I took the responses to a starter kit that I produced way back last September, I think. And what I did on this starter kit is I invited people to go into GitHub and to leave their mark on this text file right here. And that's what a lot of people did over time. Now, people have continued to find this starter kit and to complete it. So you can see that after March 2nd, there's a few more responses, and these ones are not yet written in metadata. Everything after March 2nd, I don't have that. But on March 2nd, I took everything that was there. So here's the last one, right? Here's Juan's right here, okay? I took everything up to that date. I added it to the chain as metadata. And then you can see those responses. So like here's Juan's, for example. So I want to take you through first what this data looks like in metadata. And then I want to show you how I made it render this on this page when this key is written. Let me pause there for just a moment. Any questions about the task that I'm talking about here?
Mr. James?
Yeah, Buki.
Yeah, the file extension is a .txt. It's not a JSON file.
Oh,
so I'm thinking.
Yeah, keep going, sorry.
So I was thinking, I thought metadata must be a JavaScript object. That was my understanding.
You're exactly right.
It can be...
Hey, you were breaking up there, Buki. Sorry, I just turned off my video to take up a little less bandwidth. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I noticed that the GitHub file where people put in their mark was a .txt extension, and I was kind of expecting it to be a .json extension. So I guess metadata is all encompassing. It mustn't be a JSON object. Am I correct?
No, that's a really critical observation. So when I wanted to post this as metadata, I had to copy and paste from this file into a metadata transaction. So you're exactly right. I can't leave it as just text. So what I did here is I made a starter kit where I showed the process of and how I grabbed that. And let me see. And this is in the video, actually. You can see here's a bunch of bookmarks to that video I made. And I showed here how I took basically the text file and I turned it into JSON. So I made a new file called csk001.json. And then I formatted what was just text data, right? I went into this file and I said, all right, let's grab the dates that everybody wrote and the text of what they wrote, and let's turn that into an array of objects that will render. So I had to do this step by hand. Okay. And then actually in this video, what I also did is I had to take those text strings and I had to make sure that there was a maximum of 64 characters in this string. Because when we're talking about metadata, if you want to add a string to the metadata, it has to be at most 64 characters. So in this, if you watch this video, and this might be a really good, if you watch this starter kit 006 video that's linked here, this could be a really good thing for you to look at. And what you'll watch in this part of the video is that it wasn't working for me. Okay, I tried to post this while I still had some strings that were too long, and the transaction didn't work. So I had to go back and fix it to make that work. Okay.
Mr. James?
Yeah.
Could you kindly send the link to this on the Discord channel, please?
Yes. Yeah, so all of this, I'm going to send you this direct link right here, CSK006. I'm going to put that in Discord. Okay, so that's there. And
okay, thank you.
You bet. And I also linked to this, right? So here's the playground, the metadata playground, which is very much a work in progress, right? This is just a place where we're doing some experiments and learning together. And that starter kit is linked right here. So you can look at the Postgres implementation, you can look at the GraphQL implementation, and you can look at the starter kit. Whoops, and it looks like I linked to that twice, okay? You can also, let me go home. On the home page of Gimbal Labs, there's a link to this site on GitLab. So you can always just go straight to the source yourself. So I'll put this link here as well. Now let's go into this code. I have it open here as well. Okay, so I'm in the Gimbal Labs repository on my local device. And I want to go into Playground. I want to go into metadata and then the index. And I just noticed I repeated this link twice. I'm just going to fix that while I'm thinking about it. Okay. So next time I push these changes, at least that'll get fixed. But much more interesting than that, we want to look into this Postgres right now. And I want to look at the index here. And I want to look at this metadatum endpoint. Okay. All right. So, oh, no, sorry, that's Postgres. Whoops, I don't need to look at those. We looked at those already. We want to look at GraphQL. Right, and on GraphQL, I don't have a dynamic route because the dynamic behavior is directly in the index file, right? And so just to show you what I mean, if I go back to gimballabs.com and I go to the playground, I go into metadata, GraphQL. So this is the route metadata / GraphQL / index, and all of the behavior is happening right here on the page. Okay, this is, I'm not referring to another route. So, okay, how does that work? Well, when we are using GraphQL, we're going to, I have an extension here called Apollo. And when you install the Apollo client, here, let's just look at my package.json for a moment. You can see that I have installed via npm Apollo / client, all right? And now that that's installed, I can call on different methods here. And I can learn more about Apollo client as well. So let's just do that. Apollo client. Okay, so they have a nice documentation on their website. You can learn about this tool. And I imported, whoops, I imported a bunch of different functions here. So first I used Apollo client just to set up an instance of Apollo client. And where is it looking? Oh, it's looking at this endpoint. Okay, it's looking at the GraphQL API endpoint. Let's just take a look at what this is in the first place. So I'm going to copy that URL in a browser, take a look at that. And so what you see here is that when we want to interact with GraphQL, there's actually this really nice web interface for testing queries, okay? GraphQL allows you to make specific queries to the blockchain. So this query says, okay, look at transactions on this endpoint. In those transactions, look for those that have metadata with this key. and return the key and the value of that data. And I can check that my queries are working by pressing the play button, and I can see what I get. Now, I was playing around with this endpoint. Let's go take a look at this in a different way, okay? So let me now go back to the Postgres view. Let me find that key, 205. And this is the most recent metadata posted at that key. And actually, this was just me playing around. This was me doing some experiments. We're doing a little bit of work thinking about whether or not Cardano transaction metadata can hold some basic user data in a DApp. And it turns out that this is probably not the best approach for managing a user database. This was just an experiment that we were doing, but we're realizing that we probably want to have a different authentication method. And so actually, Giovanni and Roberto are working together right now on a better way to do this. And they actually have a Cardano Catalyst proposal in right now. So this is something that they're doing much deeper work on right now, but we can still play with it, okay? Now, okay, so there's some, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this GraphQL, I'm a bit confused. You said it provides us the opportunity to actually query the blockchain. Now I can see that there's a where you can specify what you want to query, and I'm guessing the metadata. But that key part, that 205 in string, is that the particular information you're querying, or is that supposed to be a constant? I'm not sure. And where do we actually write this whole query stuff? What interface are we to write it in?
Beautiful. Yes, those are exactly the next questions. Okay, so first of all, to answer your question first, yes, this is a variable. Now in the site that we're looking at right here, just to play with the metadata, I have it hard coded, right? But I can change that number. Let's change it to 100. And then we can scroll down, and this should look familiar from the other day. At key 100, there's this transaction where the fund 2 winners are listed. So here's the response at key 100. If I change it to a 101, I will see some other metadata. And for some reason, okay, so somebody posted metadata at key 101 that then has some keys, some additional keys inside of that. And that's why the behavior we were seeing, well, here, first of all, let's go to key 101. This is what was confusing me. So let me see if I can explain this. So at key 101, yeah, that's the most recent transaction. And we should be able to find this. Let me see. If I scroll down, I should be able to find the one where we posted about the Discord transition. But where is it? Okay, so here it is, right? So this is here at key 101, but there's also all this other stuff at key 101. And I think that represents that somebody was just like nesting keys. So that's kind of confusing actually. But the point is, I want to get back to your question now. Okay, so at any given metadata key, and we can go to 2021-03-02, like I showed you before. And here you can see where I posted the participants in the CSK. This is exactly the metadata I was showing you earlier, right? Here's Juan's again. And to fit Juan's entire response, which was longer than 64 characters, I just split that up into an array of strings. Each of these strings is less than 64 characters, and they're separated by commas. And that's how we got his entire response to show up there. All right, but I still haven't answered your question, Buki, about where does this go? So now let's look at that. Now I'm going to go back to the code here. So what we have here, let's get the terminal out of the way. Step one is we access the endpoint. Then we query it. And this is the direct answer to your question about where this goes in a JavaScript file, right? In our Next.js project, this is a JavaScript file .js, and it represents the route that we see when we go to Gimbal Labs /playground/metadata/GraphQL. And inside of this, we set up this constant called getMetadataByKey. And then we use this GQL that we imported from Apollo client. And then we just use backticks. Okay, so you basically just have to know that this is the structure of how you embed a GraphQL query in your JavaScript. You use these backticks with GQL, and you put the query directly in here. This query looks similar to what we had here, but there's a little bit more going on. I can see the transactions part here, just like I see it here. I can then see inside of that the where, just like I see it here, with the critical difference that now, instead of asking for just one number that I type right here, I'm making that a variable. Okay. And then what am I getting? I'm getting the metadata at that key and the value. So this goes here. Now, this is complicated to learn, right? And you might have to play with it a little bit to get this to work. But the critical thing to understand here is what GraphQL allows us to do is to only query the information we are asking for. Compare this. Okay, let's go back. This is the Postgres version. Yeah, Buki.
Yeah, I think I kind of understand why GraphQL has advantages over the Postgres. With GraphQL, you're able to query for more user-friendly information. Am I correct? Compared to Postgres, that just gives, like you said, just gives a limited amount of information. But I'm kind of now concerned about the structure of the code because I like to understand why things are a certain way. Now, you set a constant client equal to new Apollo client, and you told us that the Apollo client is needed when you want to integrate GraphQL. But now I'm seeing a catch, which is new in memory catch. I really don't know what that function does. So the structure of the code itself, I want to have an understanding as to how it works.
Yes, exactly. And so a few things, right? So this is giving us a few different things to study over the next few days. So let me also in the Discord, I'm going to place this documentation in the Discord as well, because we're not going to cover all of this today, but this is a really nice way to be learning right here. Okay. And yeah, let's dig into what you just said. So actually, Postgres, the way we did it here, this is actually what this is doing is it's just pulling in all of the information. And then after we pull in all of that information, it's filtering it to take just the information we need, which is actually not user-friendly because it's asking for so much bandwidth. If I'm a user and I have limited bandwidth, I don't want to download all other people's data and then filter for just what I need. That's really inefficient and actually pretty insecure too, right? So what GraphQL is doing is it's saying, okay, let's only query the information that you're asking for. So we cache this endpoint. We say to Apollo client, okay, when we give you a query, you're going to go here to deliver the information from that query, right? But what is the query? Well, it's going to be dynamic. We don't know exactly what metadata key the user is going to ask for. Now, we're not talking about, we don't even have like user authentication and specific user accounts yet. We're not even doing that part yet. But you can imagine how in a GraphQL query, you could ask for specific user data if that was represented at your endpoint. Okay, so we're not fully doing a user interface yet. All we're doing is we're saying, look, when a user goes to this page, they can enter any key they want, but we're not going to pull any data until the user enters something. As soon as they do, we're going to load that. And this page gets all messed up just because there's so much data at key number 1. You can see this gets all messy, and it even messes up like the formatting of this page, right? So that can happen. But when I go to a key with less information on it, let me go to 101 now. You see this is still a lot of information, but it doesn't fully crash the page. Although you can see there's this weird like black line that shows up here. You see how that shows up? So that's, I haven't been able to fully, I'm not a full expert on GraphQL and how it interacts with Next, so I can't tell you exactly why that's happening. But I think it has something to do with there just being so much data here. Okay, you can see people are putting in all sorts of ASCII art here. This is crazy. But you can see down at the bottom, there is this thing. Okay, but what I really want to show you is how we got this to happen or how we got this to happen. 0302. Okay, so you can
Yeah,
see
I understand. That's good.
it's updating dynamically. So as I type, it loads, right? Okay, yeah, at key 2021, there's this data. Okay, and if I keep typing, oh, there's no data at 20210. There's no data at 202103. There's no data at 202130. But when I put a 2 there, it says, oh, yep, there's data there. And we can grab that. All right, how does that work? Well, I have this general query for any metadata key. So then there's this function that says, okay, metadata transaction. I just named this metadata TX. It could be anything. It takes one parameter, a metadata key. And then when you call this function at a given metadata key, it uses the query, right? Use query is imported from Apollo client. It uses which query? It uses this one that we wrote up here. Now notice, I could write a variety of queries in a real functioning app. And if I was building something real for production, right, that would be more than just an experiment, I might have several different GQL queries, and each one would have different logic inside. And then I would call those at different times throughout my app. In this case, I just have one. And it just has this one variable called metadata key. Okay, so then once we get whatever that metadata key is from the user, we have different responses here. I'm going to come back to these in just a moment. But before I go deeper into this, let's just look at what the user form looks like. It's not very long. Okay, so this is the actual logic of what appears on the page. Okay, we wrap in an Apollo provider. We tell it what client we were using. Okay, so Apollo provider is also given by Apollo client. The client we set here at the top of the page, we said, okay, you're going to call this URI right here. Okay, so that's the first thing you see. Everything is wrapped in an Apollo provider, accessing whatever we say the client is. And inside of this, we have some pretty standard Next.js. We've got a div with some tailwind just to keep it in the center of the page. We have the title. We have the source. So let's go back to that page. Okay. Title. You can see the source here on GitHub. And so there's a link where you can go look at this file. Then enter a key into the field below. You can see the text of that paragraph here. And then finally, we have a simple form where the user can type in a number. And when it changes, we set this tx meta variable. We're using a React hook. We're using the use state hook, which is imported, which is imported from React. Okay. Use state, that's probably something that's worth studying. Buki, are you familiar with React hooks at this point?
No, but I'll study a bit on it.
Yeah, so hooks, the documentation is difficult for React hooks, but the idea is pretty simple, right? What you're basically saying is, okay, the use state hook takes a value and a method for changing that value. So whenever we call set tx meta, it's going to change the value of this variable tx meta. And we put a 0 here as a starting point for that, okay? And so that means when the page loads, the number is 0. And there's no metadata index for 0. That's why I used that just as a starting point. And that's why when we load this page, initially we see nothing. Because when I scroll up to the logic, it says, okay, if metadata key is 0 or metadata key is an empty string, just return this paragraph that says enter a key? Well, that's what we see right here, enter a key. But the moment I start to type, it switches to loading, and then it loads, and now you see the words enter a key are gone. Well, let's look at that logic. Okay, so we have if this, and this is the function, right? This is the logic that we are calling down here. Okay, so once somebody enters something into the form, what changes? Well, it says set tx meta, right? This method that changes the value of tx meta. It says, okay, change tx meta to whatever is inside of that form field. All right, so every time it changes, there's no submit button here. And that's why it changes dynamically as we type, right? I could add a submit button and make this on submit, and then you wouldn't see this kind of live updating, right? Just like we see here, it's loading at each step and it's pulling things in. If I didn't want it to kind of update automatically as I changed the value, I would add a submit button and I would make this say on submit. But by making it say on change, I allow for this kind of dynamic updating in real time. Okay. And when you stop changing, it sends that new value of tx meta to this functional component called metadata tx. So take input from the form. Whenever it changes, call metadata tx again. So it starts off, metadata tx gives us enter a key, because that's what we say here. If key is 0, just say enter a key. Once you start typing, if it takes time to load, you say loading. If somewhere an error happens, return error. If the length of the data we get at that endpoint is 0, if there's no data there, we say there is no data at that key. So 2021, there's data. But 2021, 0, there's no data. And did you see how it loaded for just a moment? Quick load, you see, it goes through the loading process. Watch really closely, boom, loading, and then there's no data. So it checks that key, it says loading for just a moment, and then when it realizes there's no data there, the array is empty, right? Length 0, then it says, oh, no data there. Okay. Now is where it gets interesting. Now we have the ability to say, okay, for certain metadata keys, we are going to hard code into our DAP what should happen at that key. And so what we see at key 100 is exactly what you've already seen. If the user types key 100, then we're going to return this custom component called key 100 index 1. All right, well, where the heck does that come from? That is imported from inside this project. I wrote this, okay? So that's in components / metadata and responses / key and index. Components, metadata and responses, key and index. And this exports a little function for any of the key and index pairs that I've identified. Okay, so for this one, that's a heading, right? If we go to key 100, there's this heading, here's this list of winners, and then we put the children inside. What do those children look like? Those are right here. Okay, yeah, what do? We say, okay, go into the data that you're getting, look for the transaction at array index 1, then look for the metadata at array index 0, the value, the additional information, index 0, and then we're going to map the array of objects we get there into cards. Now, I'm sure you're overwhelmed right now. I'm sure this is too much. Okay, so I know that. I just want you to see this. So now we can go back and we can say, okay, wait a minute. What's all this, right? And what's up with this index piece? So I want to try to show you this now, okay? How you feeling? Is this, am I right? This is a little bit overwhelming?
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Okay, so we're in exactly the right spot. I want to just start digging into this because this looks overwhelming, but the beauty of it is that it comes directly from our query. So now let's go back and let's go back into this is the GraphQL playground thing. Let's take a look at what we see when we go to key 100. Okay. Well, this query, which matches what we have up here at the top of the file, right? This query here is the same thing as this query here. It's just that here we're inserting whatever number we want, like 100. And here, that's a variable. But if the user types 100, then the logic here says, okay, if the user types 100, take the data that's returned and look for this information. Well, check it out. Here, when I make this query, what's the name of the thing it returns to me? Oh, it's called data. And that's why we used the word data right here. Okay, well, inside that data, what's the first thing we see? We see transactions. And what is transactions? Transactions is an array. All right, you see the square bracket here. So this is exactly what I asked for in this query. We said, okay, look for transactions and look for the transaction at index 1. Why index 1? Well, let's see here. Inside of transactions, this, of course, is an array. Let me make this a little bigger if I can. Sorry, yeah, the spacing is a little weird here, but hopefully you can follow me. Inside transactions, there's an array. An array of what? An array of objects. So this right here is the first object in the array of transactions at this key. But this isn't the metadata I was looking for. This isn't the metadata that shows the actual winners. This is a message from Anthony that states his intentions for how to use that key. So this is key 100, transaction index 0, the first item in this array. But if I scroll down, what comes after that? The next object in the array is this one at index 1. And that's the one we're looking for. So that's why I used a 1 right here. Now, can I trust this code? At metadata key 100, how do I know that I'm always going to be looking for index 1? Well, this is the beauty of the blockchain, right? It's an immutable ledger, and history can't be changed. There's no way for somebody to replace the fact that Anthony's transaction is the first one ever to be posted at this key. So index 0, key 100, will always be this. It'll always point to this. Even, as long as the Cardano blockchain survives, this is going to be here. This data is going to be here 100 years from now. And what came after that? Well, the next transaction that was posted at this key is when Anthony posted the winners of Fund 2. And people can keep adding. Anybody who wants to can post data to this key. All you have to do is write a metadata, you write a JSON file where the key is 100, and your data will be added at this key. But that data can never replace this. It can never jump up in front of this, because this is on the ledger. This is on the blockchain, and this is the assurance we get from using this distributed permanent ledger. Key 1. Okay, well, what's in that transaction? Well, inside that transaction, there's an object called metadata. So that's the next thing we write. What is metadata? It's an array, once again, of objects. And so this is the first object in this array. Yeah, that's the one I want. So I say metadata 0, right? Get the first object from this array. And then say what? Well, then inside that object, look for value. Okay, there's value. Value is an object with a bunch of different information inside. I want the additional information. So I say, okay, value dot, there it is, additional information. What is that additional information? Well, it's an array. The first object in that array appears to be what I'm looking for. Yep, it has a use key and then a winners key. Okay, so I want additional information at index 0, the first thing. And inside of additional information, object 0, what am I looking for? I'm looking for winners. There it is. Repeat, what is winners? Winners is an array. An array of what? An array of objects. And each of these objects represents one of the winners. And this is what I actually want to map through. I want to take each of these winners objects, the first one, the second one, third one, fourth one, etc. Right? I want to take all of those objects. And what do I want to do? I want to work through all of them. So now I use my array.map. So all of this right here, all it's doing is drilling down through the response to this GraphQL query. And by reading the metadata, I know what the metadata says. So I can look through it and I can say, yep, find each of these keys and keep drilling down until I get to what I want, which is the list of winners, and then map those winners. And because Anthony, right, and this is, you have to do this, he standardized the object for those winners. Every winner object has a funded key, a position, the information, etc. Okay. I can go through and I can say, okay, for each of those objects, let's keep it simple. Let's just grab the information and the project name. So object, information. Inside of that information, one of the things we can see is project name. And that's all we're doing. Okay. Grab that, put it on a card. A card is just, I made that, right? That's imported here. And you can see that component here. It's just got some styling, right? So this, I just used some Tailwind and I only had to do it once, and I can change that over here. And it just takes whatever's on that card and it prints it. Okay. For every winner, where is it? Oops, sorry, my scrolling is weird. For every winner, put the information .project name on a card and print it. Okay, so I want to do one more thing. All right, what if I wanted to add more information? Let's see. Let me open up this Gimbal Labs. I'm going to do npm. Whoops, sorry, I've been using too many different things lately, so I just got to remember what the command is here. So package.json. I want to do npm run dev for Next.js. Good. npm run dev to open up my local environment. So now, instead of going to the live version of gimbalabs.com, let me go to localhost 3000. There's the Gimbal Labs website again, but look, I'm running locally in development. Go into the playground, go in here. You can see I fixed this a few minutes ago. Let's go here. Let's go to key 100, and sure enough, it works. But what if I wanted more than just the title for each of these? What if I wanted the description too? Well, I can do that, right? So let's do this. Let's put the project name for each of these. Let's wrap this in parentheses here. Whoops. Hey, get out of here. Thank you. Okay. So this allows me just to go multiple lines. And inside of that card, I'm not trying to be perfect here. I just want to show you. So let's use title heading 1 on each of these, first of all, okay? So the title of each on the card, we're going to have a, title heading 1. That's where the project name is going to go. So if I save this, and I go back to key 100, whoa, look at that, right? So I probably don't want to do it that way, but just to show you, I can change the code there, okay? Or I could write another style for this stuff. But then what if I want to add below that let's do a paragraph, because I have that type already. And I want to grab i.information.something else. Well, what else does it offer me? I can see the project name. How about this? How about project solution? Okay. Well, that's going to be an array. This might get messy, but let's try it anyway. Let's see what happens if I just write project solution here. This actually might not end up looking very good, but I'm going to try it anyway. Let's save and go back to my local host, refresh the page, 100. Yeah, all right, it worked. Okay, so actually this is beautiful. You see how these are, I wasn't sure what this is going to do. You see how this project solution is an array of strings, just like I showed you before, right? Any given string has to be at most 64 characters, but actually it rendered for me. And I'm not actually sure why it took, I'm not sure if that's JavaScript or what's doing that work for us. So if anybody can help me with that, I'd be happy to know. But basically you can see, right? github.com, it's broken right here. But if I look at the actual render, it looks fine. So when this renders, it just takes that array of strings and it makes it into just one string, which is awesome. So now I can see not only the title of these, but the description of each as well, the description of each solution. If I wanted to use other data, of course I could. So maybe I can bring in a title heading 2 here, right? I can put I.information.something else. Let's get in my way. Maybe I want the, it could be anything, the voting number, the proposer, the funding amount, whatever, funding amount USD. Right? USD. I can save that. I can go back here, refresh the page. And now you see the funding amount for each of them as well. Okay. So all of that is just coming directly from our query. One problem that you might notice with this is that we're actually getting more information than we're even using, right? I'm pulling in all of the data at this location. I'm pulling in all of the data we see here. Am I using all of the data? No, I'm not. I'm only using the title, the solution, and the amount right now, right? So actually, this app is not very good because it's grabbing more information than we need and not even using it, which if I want to cater to people who don't have high bandwidth, I don't want their devices to be pulling information that they're not even using. But this is just a proof of concept. I just want to show you how this works. And then as we start building real dApps, we can make even more specific queries and make sure we're only getting the information we need. All right, that was a lot. How you two feeling?
I'll just have to go through a whole lot of research, but I'm so happy that I was able to, try to understand one or two things with what you've done. Everything is always a consolidation of concepts that we had talked about before. So I think going through previous videos and that Cardano starter kit, I should be able to understand it much better. So I'll just dedicate my time to research this weekend.
Yeah, you said that right, Bookie. It's a matter of dedicating time to review the materials, and that's the key, and I'm so glad that it's being recorded. So this material is for not only for us, but for everybody else. And we can use it at any time. The only thing is, agendas are sometimes very full, but this is great. This is awesome. We have a great tool here to learn. Thank you, James.
Exactly. I agree with you on such a great opportunity.
Yeah.
You two are brave. You two are so brave. And thank you for jumping in. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We jumped in really deep today. Do what you can with the time you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Buki, I think you said that perfectly. What I want to point out though, right? The Tailwind stuff feels easy now. This the next,
exactly. That's
right?
like a walk in a park. Now we have to deal with more serious stuff.
So we've got the
hopefully.
next part, we've got the Tailwind part. We don't have to worry about that. We're like, oh yeah, okay, I see how that works. And now we're doing the more difficult stuff.
And hopefully in the next few weeks, this will be like a walk in the park for us too.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
thank
that's
you
when I'll
so
start
much.
showing you. So I'm doing the Plutus Pioneers program right now. So once we can turn GraphQL into a walk in the park for you, then we'll just repeat the process. And I'll say, okay, well, here's Plutus. And you'll say, oh my gosh, this is
Okay.
crazy. But at least metadata feels easy.
Thank you so much, Mr. James. I'm so
Thank
grateful
you,
for
James.
the opportunity. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. I'm so glad we're doing this together, and we're going to be having some really good conversations as time goes by. I would prioritize, yeah, look at starter kit number 6, look at the video of what we just did, and don't even worry about applying anything to ABCD yet. But if you could, Buki, think about something that as the ABCD team, you want to commemorate in metadata. Just, ask Josh or ask Faye or anybody else who's involved. Say, hey, let's just post some metadata to the blockchain for ABCD, and then let's pull that metadata in and use it. And I don't know why they haven't posted the winners for Fund 3, right? ABCD is on that list, and it would be really cool to be able to pull that in. But I know that the IOHK team is really busy right now, so they just haven't gotten to this. But I hope they will stay, they'll keep the tradition alive of posting winners for each Catalyst round so people can look at it. And then we can even play with that data and post it to the ABCD site. Okay, but if you make a message that you want to post, we can post it next week and then render it onto the ABCD site by using the stuff that I was showing you today.
Okay, Mr. James. Thank you so much. I'm so
My
grateful.
pleasure. Thanks for staying overtime today.
Well,
No problem.
thank you for being
your
here.
time.
All right, I'll post this video as soon as it renders and let you know. And Faye, we're thinking about you. We can't wait to see you again soon if you have a chance to watch this. All right, good stuff, everybody. See you real soon and have a good weekend.
All right, bye.
Bye.